And then you've got the Shahab 3, which has got a significantly greater range of about 1,200 miles.
What you see is the Shahab 3, one of the most important ballistic missiles in Iran's missile arsenal. This missile is currently causing a crisis between the United States and Iran in their ongoing negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. You may be wondering, what is the connection between Iran's nuclear program and the Shahab 3 missile? That is an excellent question. We will delve into it in detail. But first, let's look at this second image, which shows Iran's centrifuges to enrich uranium. When Iran started enriching uranium, it used centrifuges known as IR-1, and then worked its way up to IR-4 and kept improving it until it reached IR-8. According to IAEA inspectors, the development of centrifuges not only helped Iran increase the degree of uranium enrichment, but, big surprise, helped Iran acquire the bomb. According to the IAEA's chief inspector, Iran already has the bomb. Not only that, but the chief inspector also went on to tell the media, neither the United States, nor Israel, nor any other party can destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. Why can't they? They always assure that they are capable of destroying Iran's nuclear program at any time. But the truth is quite the opposite. This photo shows the Iranian foreign minister during the inaugural round of negotiations between the United States, and Iran, held in Muscat, the capital of Oman. This round of negotiations unfolded in two distinct phases: indirect negotiations. These were facilitated by Oman's foreign minister, who acted as a mediator, conveying the specifics of the discussions. Direct negotiations. These involved face-to-face talks between the Iranian foreign minister and Steve Witkoff, the Middle East envoy for US President Donald Trump. The transition to direct negotiations occurred once Iran was convinced of the US's genuine intent to reach an agreement. The outcome was a 45-minute meeting between the Iranian foreign minister and Steve Witkoff. Interestingly, immediately following this meeting, Steve Witkoff contacted Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, to report the details of the discussions. Who disclosed this information? Israel announced Steve Witkoff's immediate communication with them, sharing the comprehensive details of the negotiations. Several important questions arise here. What is the story of the Iranian Shahab 3 missile that almost derailed the negotiations between the US and Iran? Why is the US so adamant that Iran dismantle it and remove it from its missile arsenal? What exactly happened in the first round of negotiations in Amman? What did Trump say when the negotiations ended? What is the story behind the centrifuges that helped Iran get the bomb? How come neither the United States nor Israel can destroy Iran's nuclear facilities? And the most important question of all, if Iran already has the bomb, why is it claiming it doesn't have it yet? These are the critical questions. Let's answer them now in detail. The initial meeting between the Iranian and US delegations in Oman took place at the residence of Oman's foreign minister, Badr al-Busaidi. This venue choice was intentionally strategic for two reasons: its proximity to the airport and the pivotal role of the Omani minister as the mediator between the two parties. Inside the house, the American delegation and the Omani foreign minister occupied a room to the right of the entrance. Across from them, the Iranian delegation sat in a room to the left. Acting as the intermediary, the Omani foreign minister shuttled between the rooms, conveying messages from the Americans to the Iranians and vice versa. Both sides exchanged messages through the Omani mediator for 2.5 hours. Until the two sides felt that they agreed on the initial details of the negotiations, and that each side was flexible towards the other, which would help the negotiations succeed. Steve Witkoff came out then, followed by the Iranian foreign minister. They met face-to-face in the Omani foreign minister's office and spoke directly for 45 minutes. They greeted each other and confirmed all the details that had been conveyed to them through the Omani mediator. They agreed to meet again to continue the negotiations under the auspices of the Omani mediator. So, what did they negotiate? Here was the real issue that nearly blew up the negotiations in the first place. The United States entered the meeting with 3 files: the nuclear, axis of resistance files, ballistic missiles, and drones files. Iran, on the other hand, entered with only 2 files: the economic sanctions file and the nuclear energy file. Let us explain in detail. The United States was not only defending its own interests in these negotiations, it was also representing the interests of Israel and Europe. What does Europe have to do with it? Europe was interested in Iran stopping its military support for Russia in the Ukraine war. Because Iran was supplying Russia with ballistic missiles and drones, and this strengthens Russia against NATO, and Europe doesn't want that in any way. As for Israel, it wanted Iran to stop its support for resistance axis militias, such as Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, and Iraqi militias, to secure its new borders in southern Syria and southern Lebanon, after it was able to impose its control over them. As for the United States, its primary concern is for Iran to freeze its nuclear program. American concern was based on the statements of the former chief inspector of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, who said that Iran had succeeded in enriching its nuclear program. What is the danger in that? The danger is that he said that Iran enriched enough amount of uranium to make 2 nuclear bombs. However, Iran has 400 tons of 20% enriched uranium, and this amount of uranium could make 3 more bombs. In other words, Iran is currently capable of making 5 nuclear bombs. So you may ask, doesn't the manufacture of a nuclear bomb have to start with enrichment above 90%? I tell you yes, and we will explain this part of the story in more detail. But first, let's finish the story and see what happened in the negotiations. So now we know that Europe, the United States, and Israel are all negotiating with Iran together through former US President Trump's envoy to the Middle East. Here, we should emphasize a critical detail. These negotiations did not address the Gaza war or Hamas-Iran. According to the Iranian Foreign Ministry statements, did not ask the United States to stop the war, nor did it condition the end of the war on the continuation of negotiations. Nor has it stated that Hamas is affiliated with Iran, nor did it talk about Islamic Jihad or anything like that. It's as if Iran had nothing to do with the attacks on October 7 or the events in the region right now. What is happening now, according to a careful reading of events, is that Iran exploited the Gaza war, and Hezbollah Iran used the Gaza war, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iraqi militias, and Hamasit used them all to put pressure on Israel, the United States, and Europe to force them to lift the economic sanctions imposed on it. In exchange for what? In exchange for Iran lifting its hand on the axis of resistance militias. Militias that Iran itself has instigated to strike Israel and the United States. And in the end, Iran itself went back and handed these militias over to Israel and the United States. Did you notice the game well? Iran used everyone to advance its interests. It inflamed the entire region to force Israel and the US to negotiate with it and then blackmail them with economic demands. This is what is happening today in the Oman negotiations. When the United States asked Iran to lift its hand from the militias of the axis of resistance, Iran responded, "I agree, but on the condition that economic sanctions are lifted." And indeed, an agreement was reached between the two parties. Now, I think the picture is clear now. And the following question, what did Iran agree to at this meeting? It agreed to freeze its nuclear program temporarily. It agreed to lift its hand from the militias of the axis of resistance. The Houthis were at the forefront of these militias, who still have a clear military influence. As for the rest of the militias, Hamas has lost much of its influence. Hezbollah disarmed and moved north of the Litani River. Iraqi militias have become almost voiceless. Syria is entirely subservient. To Israel, only the Houthis remain, whose missiles continue to cause major issues in the Red Sea. But what did Iran refuse during the negotiations? It refused to dismantle its ballistic missile program. This begs the question, if Iran does not threaten the United States or Israel with these missiles, why is the United States insistent on dismantling this program? We all saw it, even when Iran bombed Israel. They fired empty missiles with no warheads. Why is the United States so insistent on ending Iran's missile program? This is the most critical question in this episode. Let's answer it for Iran. To have a nuclear weapon, it must fulfill three main conditions. First, uranium enrichment in the proportions necessary to make a nuclear bomb. Second, manufacturing the nuclear bomb itself. And third, the manufacture of missiles that can carry the nuclear bomb, because every missile can carry a nuclear bomb. Iran has a missile called the Shahab-3, an intermediate-range ballistic missile with a range of 746 miles, capable of carrying 2,745 pounds of explosives. This is the missile that Iran would use if it built the nuclear bomb to carry it. An essential point in the negotiations is that all in Iran must dismantle its missile program, especially the Shahab-3, so that the United States and Israel can ensure that Iran, even if it builds the bomb, will not have the missiles to carry it. As for why the United States is so certain that Iran may have built the bomb, this goes back to the testimony of Dr. Yusri Bushati, former Chief Inspector of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. He was in charge of inspecting Iran's nuclear facilities and is a person who is very familiar with the Iranian nuclear program. Dr. Bushati said that the manufacture of a nuclear bomb does not need to enrich uranium beyond 90% for a simple reason. If you can enrich uranium to a lower percentage, you only need to increase the amount of enriched uranium. What does this mean? Simply, if Iran enriches uranium to 90%, all it needs to make a nuclear bomb is 33 pounds of 90% enriched uranium. If it could enrich it to 60%, it would need 93 pounds to make a bomb. According to Dr. Bushati, Iran had 287 pounds of 20% enriched uranium, enough to make 3 nuclear bombs. It also possessed 154 pounds of 60% enriched uranium, enough to make 2 nuclear bombs. So, if Iran decides today to build a nuclear bomb, it has enough enriched uranium to make 5 nuclear bombs, whether at 20% or 60% enrichment. Now, the most critical question, has Iran already built the bomb or not? Before we answer your question, let me tell you a little story that may help you understand the answer. On October 5th, 2024, the United States Geological Survey, USGS, detected an earthquake in Iran's Semnan province, in a remote desert area far from residential cities. This earthquake, which Iran recognized, had 3 unusual things. First, the tremor was 40 feet underground. Second, earthquakes usually have indicators that earthquake monitoring centers monitor, but in this case, no earthquakes were predicted in that particular area. The third strange thing is that this tremor did not produce any aftershocks, usually after an earthquake. All these things meant one thing to seismologists. What happened in Iran was not an earthquake, but a big explosion. The fact that there were no casualties implies that the explosion was deliberate, and whoever did it knew what they were doing very well. So, what does this mean? Simply, Iran was testing a bomb. Now, why would Iran test a nuclear bomb 42 to 40 feet underground? Why didn't it test it at depths of 600 to 2,400 feet like everyone else? Iran was aiming to accomplish 2 goals. First, to protect the Earth's surface from any radiological effects caused by the bomb's explosion. Second, and more importantly, Iran wanted to hide its nuclear bomb test from the world. If Iran built the bomb, then why does it claim it didn't? Why does it continue to negotiate with the United States to freeze its nuclear program? The reason is obvious. Iran is a member of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NPT. Thus, if it is proven to have the bomb, not only will the United States impose sanctions on it, but the entire international community will be required to confront it, whether through war or sanctions. Its admission that it has the bomb would give the US and Israel the international justification to strike it. But if Iran does have the bomb, what will happen? If Iran announces that it has the bomb, it will have 3 major losses. First, more economic sanctions at a time when it is already negotiating the lifting of sanctions. Second, there is uncertainty about the success of a nuclear bomb test. Its nuclear program may still need more work. If Iran is declared to have the bomb, it could be severely sanctioned and lose everything it has achieved. Third, Iran will be forced to defend the axis of resistance militias, even if it is by threatening to use the nuclear bomb. If Iran said, tomorrow that it had the bomb, the first people who would ask for support would be Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Iraqi militias. In this case, Iran would be required to maintain this situation and thus stay in the circle of pressure and negotiations. On the other hand, if Iran does not declare that it has a nuclear bomb, it will be able to enter into negotiations with the United States to lift economic sanctions, and it can stop supporting the militias of the axis of resistance on the pretext that it is unable to protect them. At the same time, it can continue to develop and test the bomb until it succeeds in making real nuclear warheads. Thus, it is far more beneficial for Iran to deny having the bomb than to announce it. Let me tell you that the issue is no longer, does Iran have a nuclear weapon or not? Instead, the most critical and dangerous issue now is the bomb type that Iran possesses today a fission nuclear bomb or a hydrogen nuclear bomb? If you don't know the difference, let me explain. A fission nuclear bomb relies on the fission of the nucleus of an atom, which produces a massive amount of energy that leads to a devastating explosion. The destructive power of this type of bomb is equivalent to 15,000 to 20,000 tons of TNT. It's the same bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan. As for the hydrogen bomb, it relies on nuclear fusion between its components, just like on the sun's surface. For this fusion to happen here on Earth, specifically inside the H-bomb, the temperature of its components must reach 1.8 million degrees Fahrenheit. How do we get to that fictional number? We need to plant a fission nuclear bomb inside the hydrogen bomb so that the explosion of the former raises the temperature of the components of the latter to the required level, which in turn explodes and causes a catastrophic explosion. Now, what is the explosive power of a hydrogen bomb compared to a fission bomb? Fission equals 15 to 20,000 short tons of TNT, and hydrogen, it's equivalent to 1 million short tons of TNT. Can you imagine the size of the destruction? 1 million short tons. Here the question arises, if Iran had built a nuclear bomb, what kind did it make? And if it only made the fission bomb, does it have the technical and scientific ability to make the hydrogen bomb? Dangerous questions, and no one has an answer to them yet. By the way, the idea of Iran succeeding in overcoming the US and Israel is no longer difficult. On the contrary, countries such as Pakistan and North Korea have surpassed this barrier and succeeded in building the nuclear bomb, and no one dared to declare war on them. So Iran has two choices. Either follow the path of Pakistan and North Korea and build the nuclear bomb at any cost, or it could follow the path of Libya and Ukraine, dismantle its nuclear program, and surrender its weapons to the United States. Today, we see that Iran is sticking to the Pakistani and Korean scenarios. Here we come to an important question. Why did the Chief Inspector of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, say that neither the United States nor Israel could strike Iran's nuclear program? He said this for two reasons. The first reason, Iran has learned from the experience of bombing the Iraqi nuclear reactor in the past. It has, therefore, fortified its nuclear facilities in a way that makes it almost impossible to strike them. According to the Chief Inspector, most of Iran's nuclear facilities are located under mountains and at such great depths that no bomb, not even a bunker buster, can reach or destroy them. This means that the only way to hit these facilities is through a full-scale ground invasion, not just airstrikes. Neither the US nor Israel likely has the courage or willingness to fight that battle. The second reason, the existence of what is known as the parallel nuclear program. The world was inspecting Iran's official nuclear facilities and making sure it was committed to freezing its program. At the same time, Iran was secretly working on another clandestine nuclear program. Out of sight and out of mind, Israel has targeted Iranian nuclear facilities several times. The United States conducted intelligence operations to cripple centrifuges. At the Natanz nuclear plant in 2008, the Israeli Mossad assassinated a large number of Iranian nuclear scientists. But none of this has stopped Iran. On the contrary, the rate of uranium enrichment was on the rise. Today, Iran possesses 400 tons of 20% enriched uranium, 70 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. This amount is enough to make 5 full nuclear bombs. Today, not tomorrow. Let's discuss the sanctions imposed on Iran due to its nuclear program, and whether these could be lifted if negotiations with the US prove successful. Current sanctions include a ban on the sale and purchase of weapons and restrictions on uranium, enrichment and ballistic missile development, including missiles like the Shahab-3. Additionally, Iranian assets held in international banks are frozen, preventing access, and a travel ban is imposed on Iranian state leaders. There's also a mandate for international inspections of shipments from Iranian air and maritime shipping companies to ensure compliance with sanctions. The United States has significantly restricted Iran's economic activities through these sanctions. However, in exchange for freezing its nuclear program, many of these restrictions were eased or lifted following the 2015 nuclear deal Iran agreed upon with the US, Britain, Germany, and France. This agreement allowed Iran's economy to improve gradually. However, the situation changed with the Trump administration. Under pressure from some lobbying groups, President Trump withdrew from the nuclear deal, reinstating the economic sanctions on Iran. While this move was contentious, it presented an opportunity for Iran. It resumed activities such as increased uranium enrichment and dismantling the IAEA surveillance systems at its nuclear facilities. What unfolded next? After President Trump withdrew from the nuclear deal, a significant event occurred. A powerful explosion in Iran that experts identified as a nuclear test. This explosion triggered an underground earthquake, reportedly conducted 482 to 40 underground. This development likely influenced President Trump to invite Iran to negotiate freezing its nuclear activities. Also, he rejected a proposal from Israel to launch a military strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. Trump's stance was clear. I will negotiate with Iran, but I will not strike Iran. What does all of this indicate? It suggests that Iran is, highly likely, 99.9%, to have successfully acquired a nuclear weapon. When will the world feel the effects of Iran possessing a nuclear bomb? The world will feel Iran's nuclear capability once it stabilizes economically and politically, allowing it to announce its nuclear status and engage more assertively on the global stage, reducing the impact of economic sanctions. In the end, the question remains for you. If Iran announces that it has a nuclear weapon, which country will be the next to go after it? Can this collapse be stopped? Is the next one greater? Has the nuclear arms race in the Middle East already begun? If you found this episode insightful, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive. Until then, stay informed, stay sharp. This is Geopolitical Deep Dive.